Oh, well, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Match Day. I'm Vince. We have Ian, and our special guest today is Nathan Hunt. Nathan, can we say hello just to make sure we got audio?
Hello, can you hear
Perfect.
me?
Perfect. Yes, we can. Awesome. Nathan, thanks first off for taking time and sharing your time and talents with us. Just a heads up, I might lose power because we're having a heck of a storm here. So I'm going to let Ian kind of take the first little bit. But thank you so much. We're going to talk a little bit about your role today with the MLS and your affiliate program at Sporting KC. So I'm excited to hear your presentation. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So just quick, I'm wearing my Forward Madison, Wisconsin soccer shirt today, so that's good. So Nathan and I are both in Kansas City, Missouri and Kansas. Nathan's full-time gig right now is with Sporting, but does some moonlighting with the Federation in coach education, works with USYS in ODP, and has got a really interesting story as to how he got to the role he has now. So Nathan, the first thing I'd like you to do, if you'd be willing, is share with people your playing and coaching sort of journey. And then I'd like to get into some questions about the affiliate program with Sporting, if that's good with you.
Yeah, definitely. It's been an interesting ride, a lot of twists and turns. So I'm originally from Topeka, Kansas. So I played high school soccer. I played club, both in Topeka and the Kansas City metro area. And then I decided to take my first year of college off to be a college person. And then after that, I was like, I need to go play. So I ended up going to Barton County Community College for a year and playing out there. By that time, after that season, I want to say, my fifth or sixth surgery on either an ankle or knee. And so I was pretty much done. But I got into coaching right away. I still remember to this day, I was telling the story the other day. It was when I was 16 years old. I was playing a home match for my high school, Shawnee Heights High School. So shout out to Shawnee Heights for anyone listening. And coach got kicked out, and it was just automatic. I said, all right, I'm coaching the rest of the day because we were winning pretty handily, etc. And it was then where I knew I wanted to be a coach. So I started coaching when I was 18 years old. I bugged Eddie Henderson, who at the time was the state DOC of Kansas, and I said, I want to coach. And he put me on as a coach in training. And ever since then, it's kind of been, I've been on the field coaching, either working with players or working with coaches themselves. So I coached in Topeka, I coached ODP in Kansas, I coached ODP in Nevada. My travels actually took me to Alaska for about a year. I took a job with Alaska Rush, running their operations and coaching up there. And then from there, I went to Arkansas and ran that club, Arkansas Rush, for about 4 or 5 years in the Little Rock Conway area. And then I caught wind that the National Development Center was opening, but I also knew it was time for a change. Like, if I was going to stay in Arkansas, I was going to have to commit for probably the next 5+ years, because that's what kind of project it was. But that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. So knowing that U.S. Soccer was coming to Kansas City, knowing that I wanted to change, I heard that the state DOC position in Kansas was open. I reached out at the time. Chris Duke was the executive director, and I'd actually he was my age group director when I coached at Blue Valley Soccer Club. And so had a natural relationship, reached out, had an interview, biff, boom, bam, however you want to say it. Next thing you know, I'm up in Kansas, the state director of coaching for KSYSA. So from there, then I just started doing 3 years overseeing ODP and coaching ed. But it was my time in Arkansas where I decided I really wanted to start coaching and working with coaches. I felt that I had a much higher impact interacting with them than I did with the 4 or 5 teams I was coaching, which, little caveat, no one should ever be subject to coaching 4 or 5 teams at one time. But yeah, from there, I was probably about 2012, 2013, where coaching education became a passion when I was exposed to it. And ever since then, I've been doing it. I do C licenses for the Federation. I do instructor's license. Obviously, I do grassroots at the D and in-person courses. And that really has led me to being able to have the role that I have now with Sporting Kansas City. So it's been over a year, but I'm the director of coaching for our academy affiliate clubs. So I oversee, from a technical standpoint, all those clubs. Right now we're at 15 clubs. And it's not where they have to report to me, but it's more of I interact with them and I support them from a technical standpoint and from whatever they need, right? So 15 clubs have 15 different sets of needs, and that's what I try to go about doing on a day-to-day basis.
So a couple of questions just about that before we get on to the affiliate program. You mentioned Chris, you mentioned Eddie. Have there been people along the way that have been intentionally or just by good fortune useful mentors to you, or people that have given you opportunity? Are there, can you track a number of individuals that have helped you along the way?
Yeah, 100%. So Eddie was definitely a mentor, still is. I think I talked to Eddie maybe a month ago just to see how things were going. But he gave me my opportunity. So for that, I'm always grateful. But then he was available too. And he actually brought me out to Nevada. So I was still living in Kansas, and he would fly me to Nevada for ODP out there because he trusted me enough as a coach to do that. So for that, I'm always grateful. And I'll kind of go chronologically. So Tim Schultz with Rush Soccer he gave me my opportunity. Like, I was with Kansas Rush at the time, and a couple of my teams didn't make. And I was like, man, I really don't want to have to get another job. So I used the network, and I saw that there was a position in Alaska available. And it was actually a director of coaching for like the 13 to 15 age group. Well, after flying up there, meeting with Tim, meeting with some of the other people at Alaska Rush, they revamped the position to fit my needs. And some of the best advice I ever got was from Tim. And it was, interacting and utilizing a board properly and making sure that no matter what you want to do from this technical standpoint, if you don't, I don't want to say have control, but if you're not in line and the board's not in line with you, like, all the decisions that you make are for naught, because you're never going to get to execute them. So Tim is a mentor. I don't talk to him as much, being in a different organization and different pathway, but I actually got a chance to catch up with him a little bit after the convention, and just, again, say thanks. So he was definitely someone that was on my list. Another one is a gentleman by the name of Steve Loy. He actually coaches at my alma mater now. He coached me when I was a young kid and burgeoning adult, and I've stayed in contact with him, and I've told him to his face, I think, but he definitely had an influence on me as a coach, making sure that I was paying attention to details and being the best coach that I could. And now we have conversations where he's bouncing stuff off of me, so it's really cool. And sometimes you don't realize it at the time, but there's definitely mentors that yourself is one of them, right? As soon as I came into the state TD role, like, you were one of the first people I reached out to, and you made yourself available. So the common theme is the ones who made themselves available after initial interaction are the ones that I've stayed in contact with. And Chris Duke is another one. I don't want to say we had a great relationship at Blue Valley Soccer Club, but it was a good one. I moved on, and he understood why I moved on. And so it was reconnecting when I applied for the position was easy. And then, like, to this day, I still talk to Chris. I know he's with a different position with U.S. Youth, and I've moved on from the state association, but we still stay connected because we still live in the same city, and B, I just value his opinion and, like being able to bounce things off of him still. So,
okay. So in the coach education world right now, Vince and I are in coach education, and we all have been head coaches and exclusively competitive coaches at different times. You travel domestically and internationally with our ODP regional teams. For people that watch this that are either coach educators or thinking they might like to, how important is it for you to have some head coaching role and responsibility, even though you're primarily an educator now?
Oh, it's crucial. It's how I keep my tools sharp, right? So not getting to coach every day there's pros and cons to it. The cons are, I don't want to say you lose touch with interacting with players day in and day out and parents day in and day out, but if you're going to teach people how to interact in those environments and execute in those environments, I think it's crucial to still have touch points to be able to coach, even if it's not consistently every day. So there's things that I talk about in theory and even somewhat in practicality in a course that I'll be frank, I used the '05 ODP team as essentially my test lab to go out and do certain things, and they get a benefit from it and I get a benefit from it. But I think it's highly important to still be able to be a head coach. And even if you can't be a head coach, to at least train. From a coaching education standpoint, you have to be able to practice what you preach. The coaches are getting better and better every day that come into the courses. So that means we have to be even more on top of our game as coach educators. And some of that comes from you just have so much experience. In my case, I don't have all that experience because I'm only 36-year-old as opposed to someone who's, 10 years my elder who just has more practice.
Be careful.
It's practical. It's like a fine wine, Vince. Keeps getting better with age, right? That's where I was going with it.
Thank you.
You can't replace practical experience, right? And even if it's good experience, bad experience, it's still experience. And so that's why I feel it's important to still be able to coach in some form or fashion, even if you're an educator.
Yeah. It's interesting because when you go into the classroom with coaches, grassroots up to, I had Ashley Wallace, one of the assistants at Sporting Kansas City, was in my C license course I taught. So he's coaching MLS players, and the highest level of player I ever coached was ODP regional and obviously very good college players. But he's come for experience. He's come for knowledge. It's not a hierarchical thing. It's very often you just happen to have just accumulated, and it sounds like you've got a lot. So next question. At the convention in Baltimore last year, or the beginning of this year, a lot of the MLS affiliate programs came, and I know that there are a lot of differences in the MLS affiliate programs. And I do want to talk about what is unique about your one and your job. Mm-hmm. But what, in general, how would you describe MLS affiliate programs to somebody that just wanted a bird's eye view?
Yeah, so the MLS affiliate programs is a way for the flagship leadership club in an area to connect with the community, right? And now from there, it's contingent upon what does the MLS club essentially want out of the relationship and what does the affiliate club want out of it. But the overarching theme, like you talked about, it's the connection with the rest of the community. Like, how can the MLS or the leadership club facilitate and collaborate and, help make soccer better in the community? Because at the end of the day, I know from our standpoint, that's what we're trying to do is wherever we have touch points in clubs, can we make the community better through the club that we're interacting with on a daily basis? So, and then to your point, now it's a matter of it looks different in each MLS club. There's similarities, obviously, but there's definitely differences amongst the MLS clubs. So
I've done a little with Red Bull, and I appreciate the primary job then is to work with these affiliate clubs. Is there, I assume somewhere in there, though, there's the opportunity for talent identification and recommendation back to the full academy that John Parry runs, right?
100%. So do you want me to get into the nuances of ours or is that a...
No, before we get onto that, we got one of our colleagues out in Pennsylvania has a question. So Vince, do you want to pose Casey's question real quick?
Yeah, I'll pose Casey's question, and then Ian McCallum, who's from Bainbridge Island out in Washington, he has a coaching education question. So, but we'll stick with the club for right now. So the question is, how does Sporting KC select or identify affiliate clubs? That's one. And what's the relationship like with those clubs and coaches? Yeah,
so the selection process is organic. There's no like, hey, fill out a form and you could potentially become an affiliate club. It has to be a good fit for both sides, right? And so part of that is we leverage relationships that myself and my boss, Dan Popick, have. Another one is people reach out to us and then we vet and decide, hey, is this a good fit or not? I've had conversations where, hey, like it was good talking to you, but I think it's best for us to pursue other avenues on each side. But then it's also like, I'll also say, hey, here's some options if I was you at this current time, or if you get to this point, or if you do these certain things or these things change, maybe then we could have another conversation. But at the end of the day, it always has to be a good fit for both sides, not just for us, and not just for the club. Because to go into a relationship, it has to be mutually beneficial. So there's no set process. It's really relationships, networking, and then for those who do reach out, now it's sitting down and figuring out, are we on the same page? Do we have the same set of values? Do we look at the world the same or similarly, to make sure that when there are disagreements, when there are, tough conversations that need to be had, we at least have the same foundation to work off of and say, okay, we're still looking to get common ground and to meet a common goal at some point in time. So
what is the geographical spread, the number of clubs and players that you're currently impacting with Sporting?
Yeah, right now we're at 15 clubs, and that's as far south as the Oklahoma, Arkansas area, and we go as far north as Nebraska. Well, it's probably more Iowa and the Quad Cities area. And then we go as far east as the Evansville, Indiana area, and as far west as Oklahoma City. So it's over. It looks similar to the territory for anything, right? Like Kansas City's in the Midwest, and so we just have everything so spread out. So you look at our affiliation within the Midwest and the Upper South, like it's spread out because that's just how the territory and the population is distributed, as opposed to, like you mentioned with Red Bulls earlier. I mean, you got how many people in a 75-mile radius, so you don't have to go too far. So.
Are they USYS and US clubs? They're not from any single parent body?
Both. Some of the clubs, register with both, depending on a lot of it's contingent upon which leagues they're participating in. So we have some of our clubs that participate in the ECNL regional, participate in the new GA league, participate in national league, et cetera. So whatever they feel is best suited for them from a organization in terms of player registration, they do. We don't dictate to them. They decide, hey, we're going to play USYS, and that's what they do.
And do these 15 clubs, do some or all of them have professional staff? So they might have a paid DOC, so you're not necessarily supplementing. You're not like the remote DOC. You're a collaborating partner with a established club.
Yeah, some days I think some would venture to say that I try to get utilized as a remote DOC. Some days I thoroughly enjoy that, and others it's not possible. But no, I'm not the remote DOC. Everyone has a staff. Now, some of the staffs look different because some clubs are in completely different spots than other clubs. But at the end of the day, like, they have their staff, whether it's full-time, whether it's a bunch of part-time, whether it's a hybrid, whether it's a volunteer base. I mean, we have a pretty good range of clubs, ranging from grassroots to, high-level competitive youth soccer.
So I would definitely want to come back to Ian's education question after this one, Vince. But
yep.
I as a professional club, want to sell tickets, bring money to the ownership base, have a good competitive first team, and obviously a good competitive academy. So it's very understandable that the affiliate program is part of the business operations of Sporting. So understanding that, what values, when it's a good relationship for the club, what do you think is very often the best things they're getting out of it, in addition to some access to the first team and days at the game and things like that?
Yeah, I'm not even gonna, those are ones that are just so far off and are, I don't want to say not impactful, but not as transferable, right, to a youth club. So we look at it in a couple buckets. One are player opportunities. So especially from the boys' standpoint, there's touch points where they get to interact with our academy staff, whether that's coming in for certain events here in market, whether that's myself and academy staff going in market to the club to interact with the coaches, the players, et cetera. So that's a direct benefit right away. The coaching education part of it is we call them our observation days, where a coach can come in market and first team all the way down to our COE, which is the 9-11s. They get to observe and interact with the technical staff that whole day and asking questions and watching the players, et cetera. There's so many with our relationships with MLS and USL. There's different events that we take players to, whether it was for example, the Academy Cup that got canceled this year. The initial one, we were going to take a U13 boys team down to Tampa. That was all comprised of affiliate boys across our whole affiliate nation. So there's all types of stuff. Like one that's a big one, and one of the reasons I was brought in was coaching education. So clubs can reach out to me and say, "Hey, Nate, we want education. Can you get something set up for our coaches to take these courses or those courses?" Or, "Hey, we just want you to address certain topics, whether that's via Zoom, whether that's me coming in person." I've done strategic planning sessions with some of our clubs, and that's it kind of circles back around to what I said earlier. Like, what do our clubs need at that particular time? Some of them don't need strategic planning help, so I help them in whatever ways they need to. Hey, can you review curriculum? Can you give us an idea on this? What are policies and procedures that you guys are implementing on the academy level or MLS level that would benefit us? And then other clubs, say there's a new DOC. All right, I'm catching him or her up to being a DOC. It's one thing to be a coach and be a really good coach. It's another thing to be able to guide coaches and still be a really good coach. And that's a learning curve. Just like when we stopped playing and became coaches, there was a learning curve. There's a learning curve from being a coach to being a director. So those are a lot of the values, and then just regular touch points. Like we do monthly calls with them, with all the clubs. I just got done doing a round of like individual mid-year touch points with all the clubs. Just saying, hey, what are updates? What do we need to do? Where are we at in the planning process in terms of you executing your strategic plan? Another one that we do is they don't get curriculum, and I may get into this depending on your questioning on why we don't give them a specific curriculum, but we do give them sessions from the academy or activities from the academy. So one thing that changed when I came in was, instead of saying, hey, here's the U17 session, giving that to all of our academy affiliate coaches, the likelihood is most of those coaches aren't going to be able to execute that session for whatever reason, right? Environment, facilities, etc. So what I asked the academy staff was, hey, let's go with wherever you're at in your curriculum and maybe give me an activity that's similar from the 12s up to the 17s or 19s. So now if I'm a coach in the affiliation, maybe I have a U17 team, but the U14 session and activity makes more sense based on where my players are at. But now they have an arsenal of activities, and they get those monthly. So there's just so many things that we try to do. We bring all the directors in once a year to go over, to take them through a summit. So I'll take them through different topics that either they've reached out and wanted to address, or I feel like, hey, this needs to be addressed from an affiliate standpoint. But yeah, that's just a really quick rundown of what we do.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, because they're already sort of philosophically somewhat aligned with you in just to make the relationship, you trust in, if they have their own curriculum they want to work through, you kind of let them do that. You can help them, you can advise, and you can supplement it, but you're not dictating to 15 clubs that they've all got to look the same, right?
Correct. And there's obviously best practices that, the academy staff and even myself know that, hey, these things typically work, and here's an idea of what it would look like. There is a point of, not a point of contention, but there is something to be said about aligning as much as you can, so that especially on the boys side, when it is time for players to start progressing through the pathway, the learning curve is less and less, although some would argue it's still a steep learning curve going from traditional club to academy. But I don't dictate curriculum to them, or if they ask me, hey, can you give us a curriculum? I say, I can't do that, right? Or not that I can't, I could, but I'm not going to do that because your club's unique. Like, I can't ask you to do what the academy staff is doing and what the academy is doing overall, because that's, it's not yours, right? So there's going to be less emotional involvement and less tied to it from a club standpoint. Because if they create it, as you know, and they're involved in the creation, the likelihood of the execution long-term is going to be much higher. So what I try to do is help guide that process. And some of the clubs already have that stuff in place. So now it's just to check it, review it, make sure it's on target, make sure it's on par, make your updates yearly. Some are in the process of creating it. So I sit down or I interact with them and they ask me, hey, like, what do you think about this? Or can you be involved with this? But a lot of the times I end up talking about the foundational pieces and making sure that, your values are set, your philosophy is set, like everyone's on the same page with that. Like, you have a clear vision of how you want to see the game played. How do you envision your U19 team playing in the club? All right, now let's break that down in terms of how everyone learns how to do that from 5 years old up to U19, which is the optimal environment. Or if they have a professional pathway, like one of our clubs, Sporting Call Valley has Call Valley FC. So they have a little bit more of a pathway inside their own club. So that's where I go with curriculum with them. So they do get some resources in terms of actually sessions and activities. But at the end of the day, their curriculum has to be unique to their club, because the clubs are all different. So
yeah. Okay, so I've got one last question. I'm going to turn it back to you, Vince. This is in the education space and maybe speaks to Ian's question. Ian's out in Seattle. So away from the affiliates now, you've been involved a lot recently with delivering federation courses in a very different than the way we were before, as have Vince and I, both federation and United Soccer coaches. Do you think when we're free of COVID and we're back to everything we knew before, these current formats and delivery mechanisms will sort of go away? They're like a stopgap? Or do you think that we will maybe have alternative formats or blend it? What do you think is going to happen? Are we going to live in a Zoom world more for Coach Ed? What's your opinion?
It's going to be blended for sure. We're not getting out of COVID anytime soon, but we got to get back to some routine and normalcy. But B, there's benefits to it. Being able to get on a Zoom for even a couple of hours and not have to leave the comforts of your home or your office and travel to somewhere, limiting the amount of hotel and travel that you have to do, like it's a no-brainer based on the size of our country. It's just going to have to happen. We're not a country the size of, even Kansas. Like, that's just one part of it. So it's here to stick around, in my opinion. From what I've been told and know and interacting in myself, there's going to be some form of virtual learning within almost everything we do. I mean, even within our affiliation, I've already started making tweaks of, hey, there's certain things that I don't necessarily need to go and market for anymore, or this may give access to even more people, because I can do the same webinar twice a day, right? But I necessarily couldn't done an in-person meeting twice a day, right? Yeah. Very similar to what we did, Vince, where I offered a morning and afternoon option, right? Yep. So now we catch more people in that net. So I'm looking at doing some grassroots courses here coming up soon, and I think I'm going to be able to get more people involved because I'm going to do the classroom part via Zoom.
It's interesting you see that sort of the we've been forced to look at it, and it's become positive because we had the women's assistant basketball coach from Army on talking about gamification.
Yep.
But he was saying, we're recruiting now almost exclusively from video. And back in the day, as college coaches, soccer, basketball, video just got you to first base. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, that must be rough. And he's like, no, we think we've become really good at watching game film now because we can't go and see the kid in the gym. We have $100,000 budget. We don't need to spend that on hotels and flying around if we can rely more with some of the technologies we've been forced to use. So much to your point, he kind of took it and said, you know what, I've learned new ways of doing it. And some of these are really sensible. And of course, with learners, especially at the grassroots and the D and the C, asking them for travel into Kansas or travel can be really tough. So I'm kind of with you. I think it's here to stay. I think it's just going to be, when we're through it all, whenever that is, just more options for people to get their education. Some want to come in, boots on the grass, and others want this sort of more at their own pace. So I think glass half empty, glass half full. But I mean, the Federation has adapted well. We've got some really exciting new stuff coming up. A lot of clubs like Rush, for example, Chris and the guys at Rush have done some really interesting things. And tomorrow I'm on with Arkansas, and Vince and I are on with Brian and Louisiana Youth Soccer on Wednesday. So there's a lot of people that are enjoying this kind of content. Yeah. Anyway, Vince, I'm going to turn it over to you.
No, Nathan, first off, you've given us more than we asked of you today, so appreciate it. Quick question, the Evansville Club, who is that?
So Sporting Southern Indiana. So, okay. Yep.
It's not Mr. Fred Schultz, right? Ian and I are a mutual friend, and
No, it's not good old Fred.
not good old Fred.
No.
All right, good. We need to have Fred on here if he can figure out a computer. No. So, yeah, I agree with. I think before COVID, we knew technology was there. Now we know it's there, and it's also robust enough and powerful enough where you can have a meaningful conversation, right, in this setting, right? Where before, I think, things were still figuring out with the technology piece, and whether Zoom could have 50 people or 100 people, whatever. And I think that's pretty much getting figured out. So I think, it's a great time, save people money. I mean, that's one of the biggest things, save these candidates or coaches money, traveling and hotels and flights and all that. Yeah, I definitely think it's here to stay. So, well, thank you so much, Nathan. I don't have anything else. Coach Barker, I'll let you end it, but appreciate your time. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we've got Marcelo Serrano, who is the head coach of the Austin Bolts. Is that right, Vince?
Yep, Austin Bold.
Austin Bold. And Marcelo is originally from Brazil, but extensive coaching here in the US. And then on Thursday, we have Sophie Dewar from Challenger Sports, which is actually headquartered here in Kansas City, but Sophie's from the East Coast. And they have been running virtual soccer camps. And I literally have no idea what a virtual soccer camp is. So we're going to find out on Thursday. And then this recording will appear later today on the website. And we encourage you to share it with your club people and friends too. Because maybe wherever you are, Philadelphia, Seattle, maybe there's an opportunity to look into the affiliate programs with MLS in your area. Nathan is not going as far as Bainbridge Island, although it's a nice place, nor is he going to be allowed to go as far as Philly. But Nathan, great stuff. Thank you so much for the detail and the attention to detail.
Thank you.
And it's great having you on. We appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
And try to get that wedding planned in there somewhere too, huh?
Yeah, I will. Hopefully the Pacers actually do something too, huh?
Hey,
Okay.
hey, by the way, you also need to remember the dates.
Well, they
Of your
got to be
wedding,
set.
yeah.
They got to be set first for me to remember.
Okay.
How about that?
Fair enough.
Well,
All
when
right.
I receive my invite, Nathan, then I can go to the fridge and tell you what the date is because it'll be on my fridge.
There we go. See, helping each other out.
All right, man. Be safe.
See you
Thanks,
guys.
Vince. Thanks,
Be safe.
Nathan.
All right.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Nathan.